Since November 2013, the U.S. government has declared Boko Haram and its affiliate Ansaru to be foreign terrorist organizations. This supposedly provides further tools with which to fight such organizations and their sponsors. However, an administration that resisted the FTO designation for so long continues to downplay its significance. This hearing is intended to provide information on that reluctance and on obstacles to our effective security and/or military assistance to the Nigerian government in its anti-terror fight. Boko Haram is a Nigerian terrorist group whose name in Arabic means people committed to the propagation of the Prophet's teaching and jihad. The name Boko Haram is translated from meaning that conventional education, Boko, is forbidden. According to various reports, Boko Haram began in 2003 when about 200 university students and unemployed youth created a camp in Yobe State near the Niger border to withdraw from what they considered to be corrupt, sinful, and unjust Nigerian government, and their community was supposedly founded on Islamic law. The group was then known as the Nigerian Taliban. Violent clashes with Nigerian security forces nearly destroyed the group several times, but its charismatic leader, Mohammed Yusuf, kept the group alive until his death while in police custody in July 2009. Since Yusuf's death, there has been various spokesmen, but one person who is believed to be the nominal leader, Abu Bakr Shekau, is now considered to be the leader. Furthermore, a breakaway group known as Ansaru has appeared on the scene but still coordinates with the original Boko Haram. Because of its repeated attacks against Christian targets during holy days, such as Christmas and Easter, Boko Haram is seen by some as principally an anti-Christian organization. This past year alone, Boko Haram terrorists are believed to have killed more than 1,000 Christians in Nigeria. In fact, it's estimated that more than 60% of Christians killed worldwide because of religious intolerance die in Nigeria. However, it would not be a completely accurate interpretation of the facts to assume that what is happening in Nigeria is just a Muslim-Christian conflict. The kidnapping of nearly 300 Nigerian schoolgirls in Borno State town of Chibok on April 14th has caught the attention, finally, of the international community, albeit 2 weeks after the incident. However, the kidnapping of 8 additional girls after that has been an afterthought, and the kidnapping of another 20 women last week has yet to receive much notice. Prior to the April kidnappings, Boko Haram had generally killed boys but let girls go, warning them to go home and give up their dreams of education. There have been previous incidents, however, in which girls have been kidnapped, though not in large numbers, as in Chibok. Now Boko Haram leaders realize that kidnapping girls gets worldwide publicity. And whether these girls are recovered or not, and God willing they will be, they know that they can do this again and get publicity for their nefarious group. The very news media used to galvanize pressure on Nigeria to obtain freedom of the kidnapped girls is being used by Boko Haram to brag of its ability to disrupt society and taunt Nigerians and their government about their ability to take women and girls away. Several videos, and I've watched them, I'm sure many of you have as well, purportedly of the kidnapped Chibok girls have been released, echoing previously used al-Qaeda tactics in this regard. In the past 2 years, our subcommittee has sent a staff delegation to investigate the Boko Haram threat. And this past September, Greg Simpkins, our subcommittee staff director, and I visited Abuja and Jos to further look into the matter. And frankly, we went to firebombed churches. We met with the Archbishop Kegama, as well as Muslim leaders in Jos, and had very, very eye-opening meetings with the survivors, some of whom had lost limb, certainly had lost loved ones to these firebombings. Just on Monday, I returned from another 4 days in Abuja, where I took time and met with a number of victims who had suffered so much, as well as government leaders. Last week in Abuja, one of the Chibok girls who escaped early on in the ordeal met with our delegation. This brave young woman has suffered so much and was clearly traumatized and in emotional pain. You could hear it in her voice, you could see it in her eyes as she sat motionless, recounting her story. Yet she spoke of her, not of herself, but of her concern for her friends and her classmates who remain in captivity. I met with a Muslim father of 2 girls abducted from the Chibok school. Fighting back tears, he said the agony was unbearable. Again, this is a Muslim father. The story of his daughters underscored the fact that Boko Haram brutalizes Muslims as well. I also met with another Boko Haram victim, including a Christian mother of 2, whose 2 daughters were abducted back in February of 2012. She told us her husband was shot on the spot. 3 months later, and then they took the 2 daughters and abducted them. And then 3 months later, Boko Haram gunmen returned and asked if her son had converted to Islam. When she said no, they shot him on the spot and killed her son. Again, through her tears, which were almost uncontrollable, she recounted the horror of losing a husband, a son, and having 2 of her daughters kidnapped. We've wasted more than a year not using all of our tools because of the specious argument that doing so would provide publicity to terrorists, and now the administration is downplaying what the FTO designation can indeed accomplish. There must be a robust use of the benefits of this designation if we are to be successful in the battle against terrorism in Nigeria. The 3 criteria for an organization to be declared an FTO: must be a foreign organization, must be engaged in terrorist activity, and must threaten the security of the United States nationals, U.S. national security, or the economic interests of the United States. Clearly, Boko Haram and Ansuru meet the test, and again, that's why I had introduced 3209 last year to urge the administration to declare Boko Haram a foreign terrorist organization. I want to point out that the meetings with our embassy people were very fruitful, and I want to applaud them for their diligence and for their commitment, both on the intelligence side, on the training side of just a small but not insignificant group of Nigerians, particularly in counterinsurgency, as well as humanitarian efforts that they have embarked upon to try to help those who are suffering so much. Boko Haram and Ansuru does wage tax on the Nigerian government, as we all know, and they also target domestic targets as well. Nevertheless, their actions prove their participation in the global jihad movement that wages violent war worldwide to establish their skewed version of Islam as a prevailing religion globally. Various actions such as the bombing of the UN office way back in 2011 in Abuja, and numerous statements from Boko Haram spokesmen indicate that there is this international intent, and sadly, they are growing. They are not diminishing, they are growing. This international focus has been confirmed by Americans and Nigerian intelligence information. In fact, there was at least 1 American present during the UN bombing in 2011, which we would have hoped the administration would have acknowledged. I and members of our full committee asked that question as recently as the hearing that was held, chaired by Chairman Royce. When then Assistant Secretary Johnny Carson told us in July of 2012 hearing on Nigeria that Boko Haram's attacks were caused mostly by an animus against the Nigerian government, I believe he was wrong in the apportionment of cause and effect. There is a tremendous animus towards the Nigerian government and an effort to embarrass President Jonathan. However, Boko Haram is determined to convert or kill Christians and Muslims that they believe oppose them. Poverty did not create Boko Haram. That would be an insult, I would suggest, respectfully, to the poor. Religious fanaticism, however, is what is underlying and is foundational. Underdevelopment in northern Nigeria provides fodder for a level of discontent with the federal government that provides at least tacit northern support for anyone opposing the government. If northern Nigeria were on its own country, it would be among the poorest, least educated, least healthy countries in the entire world. Largely due to the terrorist violence in the north, an estimated 3.3 million Nigerians are displaced, making Nigeria the world's 3rd largest displaced population, behind only Syria and Colombia. Many of those displaced people are farmers, which will certainly disrupt the next harvest and further impoverish Nigeria's suffering people. Yet the blame for perennial lack of development in northern Nigeria should not be heaped on the federal government alone. We have been told that northern states have money for development, and one national legislator from the north acknowledged that each member of the Nigeria's parliament has at least $1 million, not Nigerian naira, but American dollars equivalent, at his or her disposal for his constituent services. National and state governments in Nigeria have to be pushed to do more on development with money they already have. Finally, it's imperative that we provide the training and support for Nigerians to develop their own capacity to help Nigeria end the Boko Haram threat. The Leahy Law, which forbids U.S. support for military and security forces involved in human rights violations, is seen as an obstacle to some extent to achieving that goal. And I say that as someone who has been very supportive of the Leahy amendments, both for DOD and the State Department over the many years. In this hearing room 15 years ago, when Indonesia was matriculating from Soeharto to Habibie, and we were training the Kopassus group, like an elite group of Indonesians. We had no idea which ones we trained and whether or not they were out there doing urban guerrilla warfare and shooting people in Jakarta when violence erupted there. So there is a need for the Leahy Law, but it has to be very carefully looked at so that fine infantry and soldiers who have the capability to be leaders are not screened out and therefore diminishing the ability of the Nigerians to wage an effective campaign against Boko Haram. I'd like to now yield to my friend and colleague, Ms. Bass, for any opening comments.